Are you getting anything?
Not really.
Wait.
How are we going to taste this?
I'm not. I don't think this is going to work.
Well, we're really not bandits. We're not going to rob a bank. We're just trying to practice good social distancing. Hi, I'm Dave House, the proprietor here at House Family Vineyards. And you all know Jim Cargill, who's the operations manager and winemaker and this and that and everything else guy, and happens to be my son-in-law as well. And we're going to talk a little bit while we're tasting some of this wine. This is a nice
Cheers.
Cab.
It smells much better now.
Much better. I can actually smell it now.
So this is the our 2014 current release Cabernet. We're sitting right here in the vines.
Well, I like the length on this. It's nice and round.
So Dave, a chef and an electrical engineer walk into a vineyard. What could go wrong? So you know, it's been quite a journey here, you know, at House Family Vineyards, family-run operation. You know, it's just we wear a lot of hats, a lot of the same ones, but you know, I mean, we each have kind of a history of how we got here today, and you know, and maybe where we're going in the future, and that's what we're here to talk about. You know, I think it kind of goes back to, you know, both of our obviously early days. We have a Michigan roots. Both, you know, my dad was from Michigan. Your dad, obviously, you're from Michigan.
Yep.
And our dads were pretty similar, and you know, they were can-do guys. You know, definite hard work ethic, but you know, you're an electrical engineer by trade, and so all of a sudden, wine. How'd you get here?
Well, you know, I started out doing computer design and came to Intel in February of 1974. And I started out in silicon, and now I'm in loam and clay, but we're still dealing with the basic elements of the earth. But how I got here is I was the only member on the executive staff who had been designing computers. Everybody else is a chemist or physicist or metallurgist, or, you know, they really understood the process. And so when a customer would come into town and the sales manager wanted somebody to have dinner with them, an executive, they choose me because I spoke their language. And so I'd get the wine list and I'd look at it and I'd hand it to the sales manager and he'd pick something out. And after a few years of that, I knew what I would like. I said, give that to me. And so I really developed a taste for really good wines on expense accounts, entertaining some of our best customers.
Not a bad way to learn.
So I already had a love for wine when I discovered this place up here. I bought a spec house at the bottom of the hill, and I walked up here with my dogs and my kids, and I said, oh my God, I want to build a house here. And the kid said, but Dad, you're building one down there. I said, I know, this is not developed. Someday it will be, and when it does, I'd like to really build a house up here. So when the land got available, I bought it.
That's actually it. I don't know if you can see it in the background, but we got it in the background.
Yeah, and so was building the house, and I was working with an architect and a builder and an interior designer and a landscape designer, and we're getting close to the end, and we're reviewing the landscape design, and they showed me what they're going to do by the front gate and what they're going to do by the pool and the house, and I said, what about the driveway? And the landscape designer said, we're going to plant California wildflowers. I said, really?
Well, that should be beautiful, right?
I said, wouldn't it be great to drive in through a vineyard? And the architect says, yeah, that'd be a great idea. And the landscape designer said, I've never done a vineyard. And I said, look at the top of that mountain right there. That's where Jeffrey Patterson lives. He's one of the best winemakers in California. Let's get him down here. And Jeffrey comes down and he looked at the area on both sides of the driveway. He says, hey, this is a great place to grow grapes. He says, you grow grapes, I'll buy. So I planted the vineyard. He helped me get hooked up with people that could do the planting, and we planted Cab and Merlot and Chardonnay Cab above the walkway, and Merlot on either side of the driveway, and then Chardonnay down below. And Jeffrey came down, and we did the farming, and we harvested the grapes, and he came down and got them and took them up to his winery, made wine, and he bought the grapes from me, and that was good. But he came back about a year later, and he had about 6 cases of wine. He says, "I thought you might like to taste this." And I tasted it. I said, "Wow, this is really good stuff. I like this." So next year I said, "Jeffrey, could I get some more of that stuff that you make?" And he said, "Well, here, I'll do a deal with you." He says, "Well, here's the deal. Trade your grapes for wine. Instead of me buying the grapes, you give me the grapes. I'll give you half or a third of them back in bottles. You can come up with your own label, and I'll put a cork in them and a foil on it, and that'll be the deal." I said, "Great." So we started doing that, and
That sounds like a lot of wine.
well, it started out when the vines were young. It wasn't so much, but then it started growing, and I started thinking, well, I thought I like this vineyard stuff, and so I planted a vineyard outside my living room, and I put one outside my dining room, and eventually I put one down below the pool. And I mean, I'm really enjoying this, but now as the grapes get older and older, I got more and more wine, and of course that's when you got involved.
Well, I remember drinking some of that early wine, and it was great stuff. But there was a point at which there was a lot of wine there.
There was, and so we had to do something about it. So we went out and we got a Type 17 to 20 winery license from the state and federal people. We got all made official so we could sell wine. And remember, Jim, we used to put a table out here underneath this this tree, and we'd announce wine tastings every once in a while. And sometimes we'd do it down by the rocks, and it turned out to be pretty popular after a while. And so now people need a restroom. Well, we had a porta potty that we used for the vineyard labor, so we just, they could use that, and moved it a little bit closer. And
I think we even put a sink in with real running water.
You did that. You got a cabinet and a sink and hooked up a hose, cold water, of course, and then the hose that went down the hill.
We had soap and paper towels.
It was a real bathroom, and we put a trellis around it, and that worked for a while.
Yeah. But I mean, those were challenging days because I do remember I pulled some wine out of the cellar. You talked a little bit about the labels. And I pulled a couple of vintages out.
That's the first one.
Right here. So this is, I don't know if how many can see that. So I'm going to put kind of the progression of labels. This was our first label, and I think my
assistant Gwen did the font, and your wife, my daughter, used to always draw that little house when
I don't know how many people can see that little tiny house.
And so we just had to put that on the label. We just cranked it out. And we used that for, I don't know, a few years. And then
we went to the scripty label.
Yeah, we thought we needed something a little more sophisticated.
Yeah. So the kind of funny thing about, I brought these out because I thought, it's kind of fun. We don't get the chance to just sit down and taste some of these library wines. We're always tasting our current vintages, and it's typically a special occasion, which I think this is. I mean, we're sharing our story. With everybody, and so it's a special occasion. I hope all of you have a glass of wine in front of you. Hope it's House Family. I hope it's something from our library, but we do have these wines available, both of them. Our cellar master Aaron pulled those out and said, "Hey, push these wines." So he's actually Aaron took the chains off a little bit and said we could get some of these out there. So there's some fantastic wines. So
hello to Cynthia Dean.
Oh, the Deans.
Deans are
some of our best
here. They say hi.
I hope Greg is with you.
We got our good buddy Jim
House
House here.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, Becky Becker from back in Michigan.
Okay.
My
Michigan
niece
connection.
Got Michigan
yeah. So that's Chardonnay. So I think I'll sneak you a little in there.
Well, this is aged very nicely.
Notice the color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pour some of our current vintage so we can get that in the sunlight, because this is a great comparison of the two wines. So
it's aged a little, hasn't it?
Exactly. So you can see the color difference. The yellow, the kind of the yellowing of that versus this is the current vintage, the 17 versus the 07. So you got 10 years apart on these. And that's typically what an aged white will do. Is it kind of the color kind of it gets darker. Some of the fruit fades back in there. So you're gonna.
Ooh, nice earth tone. You could think this was from Burgundy, from France.
Yeah, I can see how this is going that direction, and I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to move to that in just a minute.
Yep.
So, but yeah, these labels were kind of a fun progression, and the challenge of this site. And I think we have some pictures of some of the old tasting before the deck actually got here, and that was pretty fun. We used to come out. Shout out to Jim House, who every weekend in the
Jim
summer
would come up here and help all the time.
Kind of early marketing guy for us. Would come up with
He did everything.
Pretty much. Yeah.
He poured wine. He delivered. He picked up. He did marketing.
Yep.
It was a small operation.
Yep. So
Cindy Hexel from Michigan is on here.
Hi, Cindy. So we would basically we had some Bluetooth speakers we would set up. And we put those out.
Right.
We had the benches from our farm table, which we still have the farm table. A lot of people enjoy that farm table. We'd set that up, double stack it, and we put a painter's cloth around it, and that was our bar.
That's right. Just the two benches, one on top of the other. That was the bar.
And we were right under this oak tree. This oak tree is a heritage oak. I'm guessing it's gorgeous, but it's probably 200 years old.
At least.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous tree. We manicure that, and it's really an icon of our vineyard. It's kind of a guardian at the top. A lot of stuff is happening.
You'll see it on our label now.
Exactly. So that's you probably notice our shirts, and often people have wondered why our logo is what it is. And as we went through this permutation, we really struggled with that a lot to try to develop this logo that tells a story about us. How do you do that on a label? I mean,
and it's such an incredible place. How do you put that simply?
Yeah,
a view of the valley is not going to do
right. I mean, you can probably see the view behind us, and it's gorgeous. And we tried to capture that, and I think we have
the hillside vineyards.
Yeah, and I mean the steepness of this, and putting a picture of an oak tree on this crazy steep vineyard, and I remember some.
We had all kinds of logos.
Yeah. We had the one that had a grapevine with these gnarly roots that were trying to hold on, and this rock rolling down. And people thought it was a coconut, and I was like, well, it doesn't really work. So we kept struggling with that until we got to the focus really became not what's out there, but what's here. And it really became this bench that is now under that oak tree that's on this label. And it's just a place that I often come to. It's part of my office, frankly. But it's at the top of the vineyards. It's between the winery and the vineyards. And I'll stop and pause there for a few minutes. And it's just a place to kind of gather my thoughts. It's so peaceful and serene. And I think, what a beautiful place to sit on this bench under this oak at the top of this vineyard and drink this wine.
What this bench says to me is calm, relaxed, outdoor, just an ezy, friendly place to be.
Why would you not want to be there drinking wine?
We are.
You're right. So
that took us to a certain phase, but then it was time to expand, and I started buying property up here. I started buying everything that was not developed.
This wasn't. I mean,
I didn't know
house, but these vineyards weren't here.
But this property was not developed, and I just kept buying and buying until I got to open space, and I got to Garrett Farm, and I got down to Parker Ranch and Comer, and so that gave me a chance to plant vines.
But why not just put houses up?
I did put houses up.
Well,
for my grandkids and let their parents live with them.
But I mean, this could all be houses. I mean, we see houses as far as we can see, but there's vineyards here. And
this is my little place in heaven. This is my little retreat. I don't want a bunch of houses around. I kind of like grapevines. And so I started buying the land, and I got Jeffrey Patterson down here, and because Jeffrey had been our consultant and our winemaker at that time, and I said, Jeffrey, what do you think about this? And he says, oh yeah, this is great. I love it. This would be wonderful. He says, but I know you, Dave. You want to do it right. you want to do this professionally. He says,
That's
you
the
need
engineer.
to get, that's the engineer, and you need to get the right people here. And so we hired Dr. Alfred Cass, world famous dirt doctor. He's from the dirt down. And Daniel Roberts, Dr. Daniel Roberts, viticulturist. He's from the dirt up. And they came and looked at the place, and Dr. Cass dug 70 soil pits 5 feet deep with backhoes and climbed down there and took soil samples at the bottom and the bottom of the topsoil and the top of the topsoil, and sent it to labs and checked for 100 different organic and inorganic ingredients, and did all this analysis and said, don't plant here. This is their stuff. What you want. But what you want to do is you want to plant here, but you need to put some supplements in that. You need to put a little compost in this or whatever, and came up with a formula for what all we did. And then we hired Stadelhofer, the construction company out of Napa, to come and actually construct the vineyard. And so they came through with a big wing tie behind a D8, and they dug down with a single wing tie 2 feet deep, and it fractured the soil 4 feet wide. And that's the rows where we put the vines, so the vines could get through that hard crust and into the soil below.
But in order to get that direction, there was a guy that walked us with that crazy backpack. It looks like he was a space.
Oh, that was Kelly Bobbitt.
Yeah, so we GPSed this whole thing to get the orientation
right
for this beautiful sun.
Yep.
And so that's what established those vine rows and the direction of that
Yep.
to where those vineyards would be
So he
planted.
basically mapped the whole thing and did the layout, and then worked with Stadelhofer on how to construct it under the direction of Dr. Alfred Cass and Dr. Daniel Roberts. Daniel Roberts put up a couple different weather stations that collected solar operated, wireless connected, that collected 7 different weather parameters, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We collected this data. We went to this database of California wineries, and we computer correlated to find the place that best matched our weather. And we chose the varietals we're going to plant, and the clones, Daniel Roberts did that based on that. Now the roots have to do with the dirt, and the cuttings have to do with what's above the dirt. So we planted all the rootstock, not knowing what we're growing. We knew what rootstock was right for each part of the vineyard based on the soil samples. We just planted that, and we took a year to collect data, and then we went back and grafted the wood to decide what was what.
Field grafting.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, it was these beautiful varietals, the Cabernet, the Bordeaux style, the Bordeaux blends, so the Bordeaux grapes, Cabernet, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Merlot, and Chardonnay, and weren't some offshoot grapes that maybe weren't as popular. So, fortunately, and this is a very historic wine growing region, with, from, Ridge, Mount Eden, and then back to the Paul Masson days, well over 100 years ago.
Where they were growing grapes and making French vintage varietal wines here years before Napa Valley.
Absolutely, yeah.
And some of the premier wineries were right here and still are.
Yep.
Right here.
Yep.
The problem is it's small. I mean, we don't have very many acres, and we don't, because it's mountainous. We don't have these big flat valleys where you can run we don't have the big fertile soils that you get in a valley that are going to create all that big, heavy fruit forward, fruit bomb kind of wines. We're more of a mountain vineyard that is going to make a wine that's definitely California wine, but it leans towards the French style a little bit, a little old school. It's more complex, it's more rounded, it's got more depth to it, it's lower in alcohol, but it's what the soil gives us. It's not like we set out to make that. We made what nature wanted to make.
Yeah, exactly.
So now these grapes start growing, and you don't get a crop till the 3rd year, and that's pretty light. But now we got a real problem. And we got so much wine, we got to figure out what we're going to do with it. And so it's time to become a bonded winery.
Yep.
To get a Type 02 license, which gives you all kinds of rights and responsibilities with bonded wine space, and you are therefore licensed to perform the dastardly deed of converting sugar into the demon alcohol and to pay the taxes thereon. And that's what it means to be a full winery. And so, Jim, you really were the one. I mean, we're overtaking capacity up at Mount Eden Vineyards at this point in time, and you're the one who really said, "What we should do something." But tell me, what really got you interested? What's your background that prepares you for this, and what made you want to make wine?
Well, I think honestly, it probably goes way back. I didn't necessarily come from an agricultural background, but I did come from a rural part of San Diego, so I'm native Californian, and we always had, livestock around and stuff, and I found myself in, fifth grade on a tractor, driving a tractor. I worked for the guys that were right behind us that had, they had livestock and horses, and, one of them said, "Well, hey, do you know how to drive a tractor?" And what 10-year-old would say no?
I met my daughter on a farm.
And that was stored next door.
I bought her a horse so she'd keep away from the boys. Man, she found a boy at the bar.
How'd that work out?
It worked.
All right. So, yeah. So, and honestly, that kind of background, I was kind of always taught that, it's more about the parts and this, and the parts are the sum of the whole. And studying that, if I could figure out the parts, I could figure out the machine, and I could figure out how it worked. And that just kind of has driven my life. And, and so I just always really had a kind of a yearning for kind of the outdoors and agriculture. And I moved up here to go to college. And when I got here, boy, I was homesick, and I couldn't stand how much concrete was in this valley. And I took out the yellow pages, and I looked up. I said, "There's got to be a horse farm around here somewhere." And I looked up, and sure enough, there was Garrett Stables. And I went up. I got a job there, and I think probably about just a few months after I got a job, Shelly and I met at the Cow Palace at the rodeo. That's where I first met her, and we were a bit smitten, but it took us a few years, and then eventually, long story short, I've got a couple of I think your granddaughters are over here. Maybe we'll get them to come over and say. So I've got my two daughters.
Come on, girls.
Say hi. Put your phone down.
Daughters.
You should have a glass so you could taste some of this wine.
I know I have to have my shirt on.
How are you, darling?
Okay.
Yeah.
Grandpa loves you.
Yeah. to me. The leaves, how they kind of toast up and they cook, and I can smell that in the wine. And so that sense of place of the vineyard is really, really important to me. So my job as a winemaker is really to stay out of the way of the grapes. And, you know, Jonathan, he's on a tractor somewhere. We were going to get a report from the vineyard, but, you know, he's off plowing right now. And, you know, so he grows these beautiful grapes for us. And, you know, and I work with him on a daily basis. And, you know, I was just down in the vineyards today looking at the development of those. And we work together all the way through it. And he works with me through harvest. And we really try to get those same extractions that I learned early on in the restaurant business of really how to do that. And they're very similar businesses, you know, and very similar processes. But the wine business is very complex, which we've, you know, come to understand with the inventories and the crystal ball and kind of how we're, you know, this wine was made 10 years ago, and what were our thoughts and, you know, going into that and working with that, and, you know, where we're going to go with all of this. And
So it looks like we got a bad Wi-Fi connection right now. Is it? We still having problems?
so are we on or? Well, House of Wine. Let's talk about that. Are you enjoying that? Did you taste that?
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
What years?
You can have a sip.
So
Just don't tell me that.
it looks like we're
That's a 2007.
we need to wrap.
Yep.
All
right.
So we got plenty more to talk about in terms of the history and the experience here. We're looking forward to the time we can open back up again, hopefully soon.
Yep.
With the right kind of social distancing and the right cleaning and following all the county and state rules relative to safe operation. But we're looking forward to planning for that and looking forward to that happening and being able to entertain people back here again.
Absolutely. So I'm working with the local agencies, both the health department. I was on a call with some state advocacy groups, you know, in Sacramento today, of really trying to drive that policy of what we look like when we open up. And so I'm trying to drive that. So we have this beautiful open air, you know, place that, you know, people can get out. And I know there's pent up demand for it. And we really want to get you back here in person in a safe environment to enjoy these wines, to enjoy the vineyard, to enjoy the beauty of our valley. That we have, you know, and Dave, one of the things I'd like to close with, I think this is probably one of the greatest juxtapositions of playing with dirt. So years ago, you were playing with dirt. Now it was very refined.
Well, it was sand. It was sand.
Sand, but it's dirt. You know, kids eat it. You ate. How much dirt did you eat? You know, sand. You know, and now we're up here playing with this dirt, you know, as a family business, and I think it's such a wonderful thing and a great story to share. And you've been super generous in knowing that this is such a beautiful site in the Bay Area and such a gem, and to be able to open this up, keep the family privacy, keep a family business going, but open it up and invite people into this environment. And I think it's such a gem in the Bay Area. You know, the wines certainly speak for themselves. I do have to say, but and I think, you know, most everybody agrees. And if you don't, well, you know, that's why they make other flavors. But anyway, so we look forward to having you back. You know, next week we're going to be doing. I hope to get my buddy Juan Pablo. I hope you're on with us, JP. You know, un abrazo to you, and maybe enjoying a beautiful Malbec. I was enjoying the 16 last night. We may do a cooking demonstration on some Argentinian cooking styles versus some California cooking styles. So Juan Pablo and I may have a smackdown, talk about the Malbecs, and if we can pull that off. So it's going to be an international thing in 2 hemispheres. So we'll see if we can do it. But the wines are available, you know, certainly online. We're very excited. I've got the glass arriving for the Sauvignon Blanc and the Rosé. I'm bottling that probably Friday or Saturday, and we'll have that out early next week. So in time for Mother's Day, you need to get that out. And I think that's a wrap.
See you next week.
All right. So cheers to everybody. This is really nice.